Hello and welcome to the Business Post podcast with me, Daniel McConnell.
And me, Peter O'Dwyer.
Now, we have been very lucky with the sort of calibre of guests we have, and there's been one story that's been of particular interest for me that I would have wanted to kind of get my teeth stuck into, was the story of Irish football. As I mentioned it in the interview with our guest this week, I was in the committee room when John Delaney made that famous appearance in 2018 where he basically stonewalled the committee, and the true crisis at the heart of Irish football and football administration in Ireland came to the fore. Now, thankfully, the country, the FAI, have moved on. They have a new chief executive, a chap by the name of David Courell, and he's our guest this week. But it was just fascinating to get into the steps that have been taken to bring the FAI back from the brink, to put it on a more stable footing. He gets into some detail, very decent detail, I thought, and he was very honest. I thought a very open guest about the scale of the challenge that he was confronted with when going in. Peter, you listened to the interview. What was your overall assessment of it?
Well, I think it was a very interesting interview because you mentioned that there was the big bomb went off in the Delaney era, but since then it hasn't been smooth sailing either.
Yeah.
And David is the latest man in the hot seat to try and put some stability on the organisation of the FAI. There has been a lot happen in the couple of years since the Delaney years, which he kind of touched upon. But, you know, we've had kind of what people would see as botched processes or very slow processes over the appointment of senior managers. You've got a right-sizing redundancy programme. You've had controversial departures of, you know, managers from the women's team. You've had revelations in newspaper and RTE articles about discrimination.
Oh, indeed, yes.
Allegations. It has been a kind of constant flow of not particularly positive news from the FAI.
At a time when their debt levels were off the charts.
Yeah. So, like, it's a really tough job. Now, I thought the interview was interesting because he's a good speaker. He's a very calm guy by the sounds of things. And it can be relatively easy for people, I suppose, to sound like they have their house in order when then subsequently it turns out not to be the case. But I do think he at least has a view as to how he wants to turn the FAI around, and he has started it.
But I thought he was interesting, and again, you'll hear it and we can get it into it more maybe in the post-match. But like, not to, but you know, clearly, look, we're not out of the woods yet. Like we've just launched a new strategy. We have a long way to go.
And given the scale of as you said, the financial, like the debt level is still huge. Did he say it was? I think the
gone
second
down from
biggest,
67 odd million to 36 point something. You know what I mean? Which is still a hefty. Like he said, it's the second highest debt level of any organisation in Europe. Like, so we're still paying for the excesses of the Delaney era. We're still paying. And what was even really more revealing was the scale of the underinvestment across the organisation at different levels, at League of Ireland level, at grassroots level. I was able to kind of, suppose, give my own experience of coach my own sons, like as probably a lot of people do. Yeah. You see that underinvestment at grassroots level. And I thought he gave good value. I thought he gave good value in terms of addressing and almost like a big part of reasserting confidence is admitting that there's a problem.
I was just going to say, that was the bit that stood out for me for the interview. He seemed to accept the reality of where the FAI is, and is that it's one of the worst performing associations in all of Europe. It has this big debt pile. It has all these problems, chronic underinvestment. Like, these are all things that he said quite openly. That's a good starting point. Yeah. You have to accept where you are. Then you have to put a process and a plan in place, which he has.
And I think, having read the plan last night in preparation for the interview today, like, it's not pie in the sky. Whereas I think previous plans put forward were, they were talking about how many numbers of corporate tickets they'll sell. They were like bonkers stuff. Yeah. This is a plan that seems, in my view, grounded in a bit of reality. I was quite impressed by his delivery and by his, like you say, his calm nature. He kind of wants to almost do his business quietly, and kind of sure-footedly. And I think, given all the turbulence at the FAI in previous days, that's a welcome change from what we've seen before. He's also strikes me, he has no ego. There's not an ego at large here, or don't get a sense that there's an ego at large. He wants to do his job, having come and done, a pretty senior job in the English FA. Yeah. And again, I think one of the most compelling parts, or one of the compelling statements he said, he has worked across Europe. He knows what good in football looks like. We're a bit off that here, but he, I think, is probably a good man to bring us to it. Yeah, and I mean, like, he seems, you'll hear in the interview, he seems to be relatively good at keeping stakeholders on board. He did what seems like a pretty reasonable, wise move to extend the debt timeline. Yeah. Like, why are you killing yourself to make these debt repayments when you won't be able to
invest to grow out of your problem at all.
Yeah.
So like kicking that 5 years down the line, getting, I think he says it's UEFA, the FIFA, Bank of Ireland and the government.
Yeah.
There's 4, you could say, tricky enough stakeholders at any given time.
Yeah.
And he was able, whether he led it or not, he led the organisation that managed to get that timeline extended out. So yeah, I thought it was good. He kind of seemed to meet the moment where it was. We won't be able to determine here and now whether he's a success, but he seems to have accepted reality, and it was a really good interview.
Yeah, very good. Here now is our interview with David Courell of the FAI, and we'll be back for the post-match analysis afterwards. Stay tuned. David Courell, you're very welcome to the Business Post podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
My first question is an easy one. We won't go for the jugular just yet. What in God's name were you doing getting involved with the FAI, given everything that has gone on before?
Look, I think the reality is it's an absolute privilege. I kind of cut my teeth in the UK sports industry, but to have the opportunity to come back and take all that experience that I had gained over the water and to wave my national flag for a change was an absolute honour. So yeah, when I had the opportunity presented to me, I jumped at it.
Was there any hesitation given? Because I mean, it's not just the John Delaney era, which, you know, engulfed the FAI in terms of that feeling that it was a bit of an amateuristic type organisation. I mean, we've heard for decades of the, I won't say rinky dink, but we've heard of, you know, of its inadequacies, I suppose, in terms of its professionalism vis-a-vis, say, the IRFU or other sporting organisations. Were you hesitant in any way about the scale of the challenge that was confronting you going in?
I was very comfortable in my role with the English FA, so it needed to be something very compelling to tear me away from it. I think it is that challenge that you outlined that really appealed to me the most, if I'm entirely honest. Looking from afar, I think it was clear to me that Irish football had never realised its full potential. I think there's been moments where the nation kind of gets a taste and a flavour for the power of the game. But yeah, I wanted to see that realised on a more consistent, on a more professional basis. And I thought with the experience that I had gained, that especially as well, you know, the association had hit some choppy waters, that maybe I could come in and help steady the ship and point us in the right direction.
To say choppy waters is probably underestimating it. And I mean, I speak from person, because I was in the committee room in Leinster House when Donald Conway and the team were in that day. Like I was appalled at the behaviour that day. And I'm not going to, we're not going to trash, this is not going to be the focus of the podcast, but I do want to just, I suppose, get, like, there was a lot of, you could feel the hurt, I suppose, in the room, and you could feel the hurt, you know, on the airways, etc. like that. Like, the FAI matters to people. Football in this country matters to people.
Massively.
And, you know, it's just that trust was broken. I mean, the minute that Mark Tighe story landed on the front page of the Sunday Times and the subsequent book, and you see the scale of what went on there, I'm just wondering, like, what your first day in the job, what was confronting? What was your priority going in on day one when you say, like, how do you start to clean up a mess of that nature?
So, for the benefit of the listeners, I joined in 2022. I joined initially as Chief Operating Officer, ultimately becoming CEO in 2024. So, look, I think a lot of the groundwork had been laid in the period 2020, 2021. So for me, the biggest focus was delivering on our MOU commitments with the government. So obviously, we signed a memorandum of understanding with government in exchange for their support, which we're hugely grateful for. But there was a sheer scale of 163 governance items and changes that we needed to bring about. And quite frankly, it was the biggest transformation programme that Irish sport has ever seen.
Yeah.
And it was important to us, and it was important to me that we actually delivered on that, because that was the first step in, I suppose, rebuilding confidence with government, that we would uphold our end of the bargain. So for the first maybe 12, 18 months, a lot of energy went into securing the progress we needed in that space, which I'm delighted we did. The next biggest thing was around facilities, and we invested a huge amount of energy in trying to address the chronic underinvestment that had been made into facilities in years gone by. So,
and at what level? Are you talking at the top level, or are you talking at grassroots or across the board?
At every level. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, we're blessed to have the Aviva Stadium, which is a world-class stadium. You know, and between ourselves and the IRFU, it's a fantastic home for us, but it's also a huge economic generator for the government and for the state, with about 4.5 billion of socioeconomic benefits since it opened in 2011. But really, the chronic underinvestment took place at the grassroots and League of Ireland level. So we invested quite a bit of time and energy trying to, for the first time ever, actually give a very frank account of the scale of that gap that needed to be closed. So we identified an overall investment requirement of 863 million.
And not to interrupt you there, but can you understand from your remove, having gone in as an outsider, as to why that level of underinvestment had happened? Like, were you given a rationale as to why that failure had sort of come about?
Yeah, I think some of it is self-inflicted. I don't think we necessarily mobilised in the way that we could or should have. I think some of it is system-based as well. So there are certain barriers to entry to investment vehicles that maybe football aren't always best placed to access.
Like, sorry, and just put that into layman's terms. What do you mean by that?
So government traditionally invests through two vehicles. So you have what was originally called the Sports Capital and Equipment Programme, which is primarily for grassroots clubs. That's now been retitled as Community Sports Facilities Fund. And then the Large Scale Sports Infrastructure Fund, which will be for larger scale programmes like League of Ireland clubs, etc. But if you look at grassroots facilities, for example, and I'm not here to kind of point fingers at anybody else, but it is a fact that if you contrast us to, say, one of the other bigger field sports in the country, I think there was about a 240% higher level of investment into that code of sport beyond football over a 20-year period. So the data was very clear. We were not getting our fair share. And when we started to look at it, it was a few combining factors. One, I don't think we, the association, had maybe supported the clubs in the manner that we could have to help guide them through the processes. Two, the barriers of entry that I talked about were for those funding streams. For example, we were talking off air there's just a moment ago about your own club. If you don't have a 15-year lease or ownership of the land, then you are capped at a certain volume of investment. And that is a real issue for football, unlike other sports where ownership of facilities is quite prominent and prevalent. So we have been working with local authorities to try and promote expanded lease tenures so that we can ensure our clubs can gain access to the full breadth of what they can afford.
And just on that, again, we were talking about my own club, Glasnevin Football Club. We don't have a permanent home. We're reliant on council pitches, and I presume that's the same for a lot of clubs across not only Dublin but elsewhere. Is there a roadmap to help those clubs get a permanent home, or is that still a way off?
So I think the direction of travel is now moving more towards municipal facilities. I think the reality is...
You see some amazing ones around Dublin. You
do. But they're not common enough at the moment. And unfortunately, due to policy setting over recent years, etc., it hasn't been a priority over recent decades. But I am delighted to see that sea change within government and certainly within the three major field sports. So, for example, when Minister O'Donovan and Minister McConnell took office immediately, they were very keen to get the three field sports to work together to see if there would be opportunity to try and realise more municipal facilities. And we have established a working group across the IRFU, the GAA and the FAI. And it's probably more feasible at a grassroots level because AstroTurf pitches, etc., can be multi-purpose. But when you get to I suppose a more elite level, obviously the pitch dimensions, etc., can be a challenge if you're trying to showcase full strength squads. But also if you're playing with grass pitches, the sheer wear and tear. So a League of Ireland club, for example, we pride ourselves on having the same facilities for men's and women's. So that's something that we do not want to lose because I think it's a real unique selling point of the league. But that, would command maybe 60 to 80 fixtures a year between the two squads. And then if you were to layer in on top of that other sports and other codes, then would the pitch be able to stand up to it? So there are, I suppose, challenges that we still need to overcome, but we are trying to work collaboratively to see if there's a way through it.
Talk to me about the finances of the organisation and where you stand now, because I think one of the most iconic moments of that controversy was the idea of a chief executive cutting a cheque for €100,000. Hopefully you're not in the position of having to do that yourself now, are you?
I wish I had the personal cash flow to be able to do that, but no, I'm delighted to say that the association is now in a much more steady footing. So I think at our peak, our debt was circa 63.5 million, which is a staggering sum.
Huge amount of money.
You know, even now, we've made huge inroads into that. We rest at about 36.5, 37 million. So huge progress over a short period of time, but that's still...
And how did you manage, is that through commercial deals, or is it just fundraising? Or
No. So it's been primarily through commercial growth. So Sean Kavanagh is our commercial director, and he's been doing some amazing work with his team. And you know, we're blessed to have some long-standing partners, but also we're growing that family as well. So we just recently announced Club as our sponsors across International and League of Ireland assets, so Club Orange and drinks. But we've realised 112% growth in commercial revenue over the last 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
That's primarily through sponsorship. So obviously we had Sky on as our lead sponsor for the women's national team.
Yeah.
And then by virtue of, I suppose, the strength of that relationship and the value that they saw we were delivering, they expanded that to cover the men's national team, which was a huge boon to us. We've secured a long-term deal with Castor, which is a record-setting deal as an apparel provider for an association. And I think combination of those commercial sponsorships, but also our ticket revenue. So we're blessed to have a really loyal fan base. So we've got, on average, since I've been with the association, had between 20 to 23,000 season ticket holders, which will be one of the highest in Europe. But now I'm delighted to say that we're up on 30,000, which genuinely is a real boon to us.
And that's for the Aviva Stadium, is it?
That's for the Aviva Stadium, for the men's national team. We do have a season ticket for the women's national team. And the appetite for that continues to grow, but it wouldn't be on the same scale just yet.
And ticketing, again, was one of the issues that came to the fore. Back in the 90s, I think Joe Delaney, there was controversy around that in US 94, and then it has come the ticketing system when the Aviva Stadium opened. Talk to me about that. Like, how stands that whole approach to, say, corporate premium level selling, and then also your season tickets? Because as you say, it's 30,000 season tickets. I mean, there's not many general tickets left if you're doing that every week or every time.
Exactly. Obviously, our capacity is 52,000. We maintain that we offer real value for fans, and we've tried to reflect that in our long-standing supporters. So in this period of high inflation, yes, our prices have climbed a small bit in recent years, but we still think you can get a kids package or a family package where you can get 6 games a year, 5 games a year for an average for a kid might be 25-30 euros. So that's amazing. To be able to come and see your icons and heroes play and share that moment with your family is very special. I think where the growth opportunity presents now is on the corporate side. So hospitality, obviously the offering in the stadium is strong, and we've seen a lot of uplift in our Club Ireland. That's the offer. That's the hospitality offering under the FAI.
How much is that now? Remind me, how much is that?
It would vary. Obviously, your boxes could range from 30 to 20 grand.
Per annum, is it?
Per annum.
Yeah.
Maybe 10 to 30 grand, I would say, would be the range. And then obviously, if you're looking just for premium tickets without hospitality, it might be 100 to 150 euros per game.
Per game, okay.
But then general admission, as I say, is where we get a huge, boost by having that guaranteed income. And obviously peaking at 30,000 is a record number now.
And I presume occasions like a Troy Parrott hat-trick in Hungary do great wonders. I mean, have you seen a natural uplift in interest even since kind of that match?
Absolutely. Like, I think, I said, the season ticket numbers have always been strong by virtue of the loyal fans that we have, but we've gone from maybe 23,000 last year up to 30,000 this year. So, huge interest.
And I presume that's a very stable revenue system for you.
Very stable revenue, absolutely. That's, something that we can take to the bank and we can rely on. Obviously, it's a year-on-year basis, so we can't always take it for granted. So we continue to invest in the matchday experience. But the feedback's good. I think people really do enjoy the atmosphere in the Aviva for a football game. It is like nothing else. But it also extends beyond, the bums on seats. I think the appetite around the game is exponential. Like, obviously Troy's exploits in November were memorable for all of us. But I think, I had a conversation with Declan McBennett, who's the head of sport at RTE. And he was telling me that they had north of 80 million views of content in relation to the Hungary game alone. Like, there is nothing that moves this country in a way like football does. Yeah. If you fast forward to Czechia, obviously it didn't bring about the result that we all aspired for. But, peak viewership, 1.6 million on RTE2, a further 1 million on RTE Player. Like, they are record numbers for a sporting occasion. Yeah. So it is clear the appetite is there, the hunger is there. I think this is the potential that I talk about, that I don't feel we have consistently qualified for major tournaments. But people got a flavour of what I believe is going to be a real celebration of football come Euro 2028, when the men's team are representing on home soil, or 2027 in Brazil when the women's team, which, under Carolyn now we've secured a playoff and a very favourable one as we move into the back end of this year.
So just back to the money aspect, I mean, obviously on a much more stable footing than it was. I mean, is there, like, given there's probably vicissitudes and ups and downs in terms of your cash flow, I mean, how do you then manage the numbers to a degree that you're not getting to a point where you're even into your overdraft, or you're burning through an overdraft, that you're getting into a position like that? I mean, to what extent on that scale, how have you managed to stabilise things?
Yeah, so it hasn't been easy. I think it's fair to say there's a lot of demands on Irish football. There's a lot of ground we need to make up in every aspect. Yeah. We referenced facilities earlier, but also, digital adoption or service levels. Everything continues to require more and more investment. So what we do is try and budget prudently. We don't plan for qualification for major tournaments. That is a bonus. So it's a bonus, yeah. Okay. Correct. So that is something that ensures that we have a much higher confidence level going into our forecasts. But also, if you think about, in the last probably 12, 18 months, one of the big areas of focus that I had was around our financial restructure. Okay. So we had a debt horizon running through to 2031. That was agreed in 2020 when we did the initial support package. Now that would have resulted in pay downs on a very aggressive rate, which we have been meeting over recent years, but trying to balance that with, I suppose, the ambition we have for Irish football was what I identified as needing a small bit of adjustment.
Yeah, there's no point aggressively paying off a debt if you can't grow or do anything.
Correct. Yeah. And I think the reality is people need a bit of hope in the game, but it needs to be balanced in reality. And, we are, and we pride ourselves on being responsible with regards to our debt and making sure that we will honour our commitments. But what we did is we worked with our 4 lenders. So that would have been Bank of Ireland, UEFA, FIFA, and the Government of Ireland, to make sure that we could rephase that debt from 2031 horizon to 2035. And I'm delighted that all 4 parties recognised the progress that we have been making. Yeah. And I suppose they had the confidence that we were in a position to commit to those longer timeframes. That was what I suppose needed to happen to then enable us to undertake what was a major transformation program that we just completed in the last couple of weeks for the association. So I can expand on that in a few minutes if you want.
Well, I want to talk about the transformation, because we in the Business Post have undergone 2 or 3 years of major transformation here. We've turned what was a sleeping Sunday newspaper into an always on digital first operation, and that turning a tanker while it's still moving can be very tricky. Talk to me about going in and doing all of that change. Like, I presume that's your own leadership team around you. You've had to make changes there, or what was your focus, or how did you manage to implement the sort of change that you were talking about?
Yeah, so I think it was clear to me anyways when I joined the association, because I had the benefit, I used to work with the English FA for 6 years and in that role quite extensively across European football, so I could see what good looked like.
Yeah, okay.
And I think as time evolved within the FAI, we were able to identify that we weren't set up for success.
Yeah, and how? Let me just not to interrupt you, but how far off good were we?
Well, our current strategy, which we just released in the last maybe 5-6 weeks, is called "It's Time to Change the Game." Yeah. There's a reason why it's entitled that. Irish football has been underperforming on a few different fronts. So we haven't been qualifying consistently. Our player development experiences are quite varied across the country. If you're in Donegal, you might get 25 weeks of playing football. If you're a young boy or girl, while if you're in Leinster, you might get 40 to 45. Facilities are way off the mark. And quite frankly, if you look at the development pathway, our League of Ireland academies are woefully under-resourced, which we're making huge inroads in now. But that title for the strategy isn't just plucked out of the air. It is a fact. UEFA evaluate every federation of the 55 against where they project you should be, based on your GDP, your playing base, your population, the number of qualified coaches you have, etc. And then they contrast that with tournament progression, club performance, number of players in the top 5 divisions, etc. And we are the third most underperforming nation across Europe. And that's not something that we're proud of, but it's something that we accept, we acknowledge. And I suppose it gave us the confidence to say, we need to change this. So in doing so, a key part of this transformation program was, one, creating the headroom to embark on it, because yes, there can be financial, I suppose, benefits off the back of it, but it takes a significant outlay initially to undertake it. Secondly, we wanted to have a strategy defined for the future that made sure that we could line everything up to it. And I'm delighted for the support that our own board showed in the leadership team to back us on this journey, because now we have all those component parts with the restructure, or the financial restructure, a North Star in our new strategy, and obviously having embarked on a significant, and I can't understate the scale of it, like we ultimately, sadly, saw 25% of the organisation depart. And, you know, I'm hugely grateful to all of my colleagues for all their efforts. There's been, you know, amazing servants in there to the game over the last 10, 15, 20 years. But it was the first time, maybe in that time, that the organisation took stock to say, where are we headed and are we set up for success?
Well, that's a difficult conversation to have when you're, as you say, you're letting go of a particular skill set or a kind of level of extra, experience. But I suppose you have to, if you're going to deliver on the strategy that you've outlined, right-size the business. You have to right-size the organisation, and you have to be able to say, as difficult as the transition might be, it'll put you on a better footing for the future, I suppose.
Absolutely. And look, it
was speaking from experience.
I know, look, we all know the industry you're in and the challenges that you face, but for us, it was grounded in 3 objectives. 1, strategic alignment. 2, cultural change. I think we aspire to be a high-performing organisation. I don't think we always achieve it. There are certain pockets where we are really world-class, but we want to be that in every aspect of what we do. And also, I think, you know, by virtue of the change, we're hoping to bring about greater diversity within the organisation as well. And then the third one being financial stability as well. So those 3 things were what gave me, I wouldn't say the comfort, it's a very uncomfortable thing to do, but the confidence that it was the right thing to do for Irish football moving forward.
Was there any resistance? Because again, culturally, if you step into an organisation and you haven't been there, and you might have long-standing people who might say, well, we've always done it this way. Did you face that resistance when you first announced the plan or you first moved to mobilise the plan?
Understandably, yes. We had a workforce of maybe 265 people. Our expenditure on that workforce accounted for maybe 27% of our turnover. The European average is 17%. So, again, it comes back to having the confidence that something's not
you need
right,
a leaner organisation,
right? But the unique situation we find ourselves in is the absence of a football industry in this country. So if you contrast it to England, where I would have spent quite a bit of time, yes, the FA is a massive behemoth, but if you finish your time at the FA, you go into a club or you go into private enterprise or whatever. Yeah. There's an industry there. But in Ireland, the FAI has traditionally been the only show in town. And that's what made it even more difficult and understandably framed maybe certain people's views of what the future could look like and the impact on them. But we're trying, in combination with this change, to invest into the League of Ireland, because we do recognise football is the global game. Yeah. Football is the biggest sporting industry in the world. And let's be frank, sport is a business. And our little island can play a much bigger part in that global landscape. We've been overly reliant on the UK market to develop our players. And by virtue of that, we only have in our academy system across our League of Ireland clubs 11 full-time equivalent resources working in the academy development space, when we should have about 200. Okay. So alongside this huge change that we were embarking on, we also sought government support in the form of an injection, because we believe that football can and should be a self-sustaining industry. It is in practically every other, developed country in the world, and Ireland should be no different. Yeah. So I'm delighted that government saw the value of investing in the game, as they have on, pretty much every time we've gone looking for their support in recent years. And that has come in the form of a €3 million multi-year investment into academies, not into facilities, but into people, so that we can see that growth from 11 FTE go to 61 or 71 within the next 6 months.
And that's a huge change.
Huge, massive.
Yeah. Talk about the League of Ireland, because again, it's often seen as the neglected child of Irish football. Obviously, there was a lot of tension there under your predecessor. It was not seen as a good picture or a good dynamic. But I see it even in our area, like the interest in going to Bows, the interest in going to Shells has, Bows on a Friday night is seen as a great night out. I'd be loath to mention our deputy editor, who's a big Shamrock Rovers fan, but like you see what's happened at Tallaght Stadium, the growth of what's happened at Tallaght. It's been, there's visible progress before our eyes. But how stands that relationship between FAI Corporate and the League of Ireland?
Yeah, so look, within the organisation, I think there's no doubt we see huge value in the league. It's been a real asset to us in recent years. And I think credit goes to Mark Scanlon, our League of Ireland director, and his team within the association who've been leading the charge on that front. But, ultimately most of the credit goes to the clubs. Yeah. Over the last couple of decades, they have continued to invest, and our clubs take different shapes and forms. Some of them are privately owned, some of them are multi-club ownership, some of them are fan-owned. But each and every club has been putting in a shift to try and elevate the product and the standard. And I think that's paying off. The appetite for the game is through the roof. We've got maybe 1.1 million people through the turnstiles every year for League of Ireland games. Yeah. We now have consistent viewership. We have done a multi-year deal with Virgin Media, whereby every single round of fixtures is shown every Friday night, 7:30. You can tune in. And that has that consistency, the positioning of the league has improved, the branding of the league, the social media output, the characters around the league, everything has come together to help showcase the product in a much better light. And, fans are queuing up for it. You mentioned Bows there. Obviously, they're, I suppose, constrained by capacity. They've got 3,500 wait list for their season tickets. Yeah. And that's not... And
there is a new stadium coming.
There is a new stadium coming, but that's not unique to them. I would say north of 70% of our League of Ireland games are sold out.
Yeah, okay.
Every year. And that is the next challenge we have. Yes, we're starting to address, I suppose, the development of the players through the Academy Investment Programme that government have kindly supported, but facilities investment does need to help unlock that next level of kind of engagement with the league, because the product is really good. But on screen, it's maybe not showcased in the best light, with stadia that don't look as modern as they should be, etc. And obviously the capacity constraints that go with it.
You mentioned earlier that you have just released your new strategy document.
Yes.
What was the thinking going into it, and what will success look like come 2029 when that period is over?
Sure. So, look, our vision is to inspire the nation and connect communities. I think, you just have to look at the wave of support that swept across the country when our international teams are performing well. But the same goes at domestic level with leagues and also embedded within their communities. So football is powerful. What we want to do is make sure we realize that and, I suppose, capitalize on that and make sure that we can eke every single benefit out of it for the communities that support it. So we have 3 different pillars within our strategy: facilities, football development, and League of Ireland. Each of those pillars is trying to address a key challenge or opportunity.
Or whatever,
So facilities, obviously, I've talked about the chronic underinvestment. Now, we have made significant inroads by virtue of that facilities vision that we developed a couple of years ago that outlined that 863 million gap that needed to be filled. I am delighted to say that, that galvanized our community to stand up and shout for what they need, but also, more importantly, for government to kind of recognize the need for investment and the value that it can derive for the country and those communities. So we secured €112 million in 2024 across those 2 funding streams, which is a record number. Like across Sports Capital and Equipment Programme, that was an 82% increase on the previous round. Across Large Scale Sports Infrastructure Fund, that was a north of 300% increase on the last round. So we have made big inroads. However, we can't solely rely on government. They will be the primary thing that's going to shift the dial in facilities, but we also want to look at what we can control ourselves. So we've set about establishing a Global Ireland Football Foundation, which is a philanthropic play to introduce additional investment into the grassroots facilities. So that's pillar 1.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Pillar 2 is around football development. So we want to elevate the standards that everyone experiences. I think, growth in the game continues to be strong. We're at about 250,000 registered players now. That's circa 10% growth over the last 3 to 4 years. But actually, if you look at it, the women's and girls game in particular is booming.
Yeah.
So by virtue of our qualification, again, that's the power of the international teams.
See it to be it, or
Exactly. So we qualified for Australia New Zealand World Cup 2023, and over the last 3 seasons alone, we've experienced a 79% growth in women's and girls registrations, which is staggering. But we want to make sure that we can continue to develop that pathway and ensure that, there's age and stage appropriate formats for every child that wants to play. And then within the League of Ireland, as said, our big focus for the coming couple of years, having secured that government funding, is to deliver on it now in terms of that academy development, because not only will it be a kickstart to an industry akin to, say, the movie industry or the horse racing industry, but we also believe it is the future for our future Ireland players. And we want to make sure that the absence of development that they've had in by virtue of Brexit, so they can no longer go overseas to UK clubs for those formative years of 16 and 17, that they're able to get that quality coaching, contact time here in Ireland in their environment.
So again, fast forward to the end of this term, you're looking at, no strategy will ever deliver 100% of what you're looking to do. But what would success look like to you? What would you be happy with out of what you've outlined and what you're proposing to do? Is it a certain number of, grounds seeing kind of improvements? Just talk me through what you think.
Yeah, no, look, there's probably about 110 or 120 different KPIs in our strategy. So it's kind of difficult to pin it on any one. The reality is, we want to see more people playing football. Yes, we're a national governing body that people primarily associate with international teams, but that's nearly a vehicle for inspiring the next generation. We want to see as many kids strapping on boots week in, week out. We want to get as many volunteers engaged with the game as possible to create that environment that's safe, but also welcoming and fun. So that is our core purpose, to enrich the lives of people through football, positive football experiences. If I was to fast forward to the end of this, I would love to say that we have qualified. One of our KPIs will be to qualify for a major tournament, men's and women's.
Yeah.
I think we're on a good track with the women's team now. We've secured back-to-back wins against Poland in the last round, which gives us a preferential playoff route even though I sat with Carla Ward yesterday. She doesn't want to play off route. She wants to be France and Netherlands in the next round and qualify direct. But that would be very powerful to be in Brazil next summer. Our men's national team obviously are, I suppose, on a really positive trajectory. I think everyone can see that, the work that Hamer has put in with the team, the backroom team. But we have a really unique occasion here in hosting Euro 2028 with 7 fixtures in Dublin. And, you know, I am confident that we will be there on merit.
Yeah.
But if not, we still have a very high likelihood of a backdoor entry by virtue of that hosting.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that we capitalise on those 2 occasions to inspire that next generation, to see that numbers grow, but also ensure that we as an association play our part to improve the service levels, to improve the environment. And that's what we wake up every day trying to do.
So talk to me then about transposing this down to grassroots level. And again, speaking of my own experiences, as we said, like, you know, I'm on the sideline every weekend. We've got basic facilities in terms of balls, nets, all that kind of stuff. Will we see a tangible difference at the end of this at our level?
Yes, we believe so. So within the coming weeks, we'll be introducing new playing formats, which is slightly more progressive than what we've done before. So a lot more small-sided games. We want to have kids, you know, I'm a coach myself. You see kids too often, you know, doing cartwheels on the sidelines for 20 minutes, distracted and entertaining themselves. We want more time on the ball. That is what we believe will actually deliver better players and better experiences. That's what they turn up for, is the opportunity to
play as much football
as they can. So we're trying to be as dynamic as we can. So that will be something that we'll be rolling out within the next couple of months. Obviously, we're trying to improve the experiences across every pocket of the country. Yes, you play in Leinster now, which is quite well served, but there are, you know, I'm from Mayo originally. We play.
Are you in the wrong association?
No. I'm in the right place for me. Don't you worry. But no, like I think there are aspects of the country or parts of the country where the opportunity to play isn't the same. So we want to standardise that. We also have completely overhauled our coach education platform. Yeah. So we've got a really strong record of good coach education in the country, but we've redeveloped all of our programs. We've digitized the whole lot to make sure that access is more readily available to do.
And I've even seen that going through the safeguarding and all the extra. Like, I mean, being able to do those online, you know, has made a huge, because you know yourself, trying to find the time to take a 2-3 hours out to get to wherever to do a course.
Absolutely. But like, one of the things that I'm most proud of that the association has undertaken is our Club Mark program, which, for the benefit of the listeners, is effectively a quality standard. And, you know, credit to the previous administration and those that embedded it in 2018. But it was a slow build, and we're now at a point where 2026, we've said it's a mandatory requirement, and that requires minimum standards across safeguarding, across administration and governance elements of each and every club in the country, which means that we have much more control, oversight, visibility and assurance around all those things that will help improve the standards. Now, that places an additional burden on volunteers. I see it in my own club, and you referenced it yourself. You know, how does everyone find the time to do the different courses, etc.? But we're trying to play our part to make sure that, yes, everyone still needs to get Garda vetting, and unfortunately that is a very paper-intensive process. But
and it's sort of infuriating, because if you're involved in the GA and the soccer, you have to do 2 separate processes. Like.
Understood. And, you know, I'm a board member of the Federation of Irish Sport, and it is probably one of the biggest challenges facing all sports, or pretty much all social enterprises, to be honest, because volunteering it's a really positive aspect of Irish society. Yeah. We've got a huge volunteering base in this country, but the lack of synergy in that system is something that continues to cause frustration. But we are trying to play our part to unlock the other elements and make every other aspect that we can control as easy and accessible as possible.
There was a move, and again, not to get too sporty on this, but there was a move to move the season to a summer season to coincide with the League of Ireland season. Is that going to happen, or is that off the table for now?
So what you're referencing is what was called aligned calendar. So we are the only country out of the 55 in Europe that do not play with a aligned calendar. We have a split calendar where clubs and leagues can choose to play winter football or summer football. Yes, we had identified that as being something that could potentially deliver benefits for the game. Not because it would align with the League of Ireland, but by virtue of as I've outlined ad nauseum already, the dearth of facilities that we have in this country, combine that with the bad weather that we feature.
Absolutely.
And, you know, come December and January, you can have weeks on end where
the kids aren't playing.
The kids can't play.
Yeah.
So until a point in time where our facilities are at that level where they have, you know, undersoil heating, good drainage, adequate number of artificial pitches, unfortunately, that's something that we're going to have to live with in this climate and this inclement weather that we have to contend with. So the idea of moving to an aligned calendar was that it could create more playing opportunities and more consistent experiences for our players. So it's something that there are definitely benefits in, but equally in consultation with our community, obviously it has proven divisive.
Okay.
And I suppose
there's not a consensus there.
There is unfortunately not a consensus. Yes, we were given a mandate by our General Assembly to proceed with it, but I think it's quite clear from the level of discourse that it's not as easy to execute as maybe people had envisaged. So we're still in a period of reflection.
Okay, well, I would certainly give my own tuppence. I think you should pursue it. But let's go to you.
Sure.
Your leadership style, how do you deal with conflict? And how do you mind yourself? Because again, it's a question we tend to ask the business leaders who come into the studio. I'm always interested to hear how you deal with really difficult circumstances and how do you mind yourself? So let's start, I suppose, if we can, about your working day. Are you a early starter, late riser, or how do you manage your day?
Yeah, look, I've got young kids. So that is a key component that I have to try and fit around what is a pretty demanding role. I would say I'm up about 6:45 each morning. I tend to be in the office between 8:15, 8:30. I would tend to leave about 6:30, try and get home, do bedtime, bath time, etc. And then tend more often than not to be back online for another couple of hours after that, unfortunately.
It's a long day.
It is a long day, but, you know, I don't complain about it. I'm absolutely cherish this role. It's an absolute honour to kind of lead your National Football Association. But there is added complexities to it in terms of being an international body. There's huge amounts of travel, be that with international teams or UEFA or FIFA commitments, etc. So I would tend to be on the road. Maybe I would argue about it.
And can you delegate any of that stuff to your deputies?
There's kind of protocol that is commonplace within international football where, you know, if you're a visiting delegation, it tends to be the president and the CEO that would represent. But where possible, obviously, we've got a fantastic team. So John Martin is our director of football. He joined us maybe back in September. He's previously CEO of Shamrock Rovers, and, you know, he's really taken up the mantle on quite a few aspects of what we do. And Christina Kenny is our chief operating officer, and she has come with a wealth of experience in the digital space and renewable space. So got really trusted, you know, deputies there that I can lean on. But more often than not, you know, there are roles that I have to fulfill. And I'm blessed to have the support of my wife and kids to allow me to go and do it, I suppose.
And I'm always interested in that balance between, say, people who, well, I don't want to say micromanage is the wrong word, but tend to be, like to be in the weeds on certain things. But then those, I suppose, leaving your top team enough space to do their job effectively. And I'm not long as an editor, so but this is a kind of a question I ask myself all the time. How much do I need to be in the weeds of things, and how much do I let my top team do their stuff as well? Talk to me about where you find yourself on that spectrum of having to be on top of stuff and then also letting your team do their job.
Yeah, no, it's a really fair question. And, you know, as someone that has previously held the role of chief operating officer, where you kind of have to be working up and down, it's definitely a transition. It's a journey that I'm on as well, if I'm entirely honest. But I am blessed to have a really strong team within the leadership team of the FAI. And I suppose, you know, you referenced there, what's your leadership style? I've always prided myself on being quite a collaborative leader. I try and empower people to get on and do what they do. And I think, you know, if you look at some of the progress we've made in certain aspects, like the transformation program, Aoife Rafferty, our people and culture director, has been a huge asset to us to drive that forward. Or our League of Ireland Academies proposition to government, Mark Scanlon, again, huge ambassador for that. So I look across the breadth of the team, see where the strengths are, see what I can help, you know, I suppose, elevate and dip in and out. But yeah, it's about drawing on the full resources of the Federation to make sure that we can...
Describe to me your perfect day in your job, if there is such a thing?
The perfect day would be, there's two elements to it. I think the sheer elation of success. So to see an international team get a win or get a result or something, powerful like, that moment in Hungary. Oh my goodness. I try and not get too emotional about a result, but it was hard to contain it. Because you realize that's what we're all in it for. But equally, it can be just as powerful to go down to Ballyulster FC and Coach Academy on a Saturday morning and see the smiles on the kids' faces and, quite frankly...
And call themselves Troy Parrott.
Exactly, yeah. And, there are a lot of challenges that we face. Running any sporting body is difficult. But it is those moments when you actually take a step out of the office and see the value of it, or even, going down to a Football for All event or something where we get to see disability football, which is a huge area of focus for the association. It is what we're doing. There's so many positive things around Irish football. And I think what we really need to do more is try and, I suppose, promote that a little bit more, because it is genuinely a real anchor for many communities in this country.
Yeah. David, you've mentioned there about Ireland hosting or part hosting Euro 2028 and the opportunity that it presents itself. From a business perspective, how big of an opportunity is it?
It's significant. I think if you look at it, we kind of met a bit of resistance at the time. I remember some of the media commentary was, why are the FAI pursuing this? Is it distraction tactics? No, it was a strategic play by the FAI because, one, hosting it will deliver a huge financial benefit to the association, circa 8 million in terms of hosting benefits. We also have access then to a legacy pot of money that is combined contribution from Government of Ireland and ourselves, about 6 million. But then we have the added benefit of near-on confidence of qualification, which would deliver another 8 to 10
You might as well close the country.
That's the financial benefit for Irish football. But the benefit for the economy, for the country, is untold. Like, government have been hugely supportive at every step of this journey.
Are there any major infrastructure? Because I know when, say, either Croke Park or the Aviva Stadium have had to do big, say, UEFA games, there is an extra level of, I suppose, preparation or even infrastructure needed in terms of hosting foreign media and television.
Of course.
Are we good to go on that front?
Look, I think if you reflect on the Europa League final in 2024, Alexander Shefrin, president of UEFA, said it was perfect in every sense of the word. So we're in a really good starting point. It doesn't come cheaply, though. I think the reality is government will be investing circa 93 million to support the delivery of UEFA Euro 2028 in Ireland, where we'll host 7 games.
Yeah.
But for that, they're anticipating a 450 million return to the Exchequer. So it is solid business sense to invest in this. But the reality is, I think, as a nation, the value that it's going to derive is it's going to be unparalleled. Everyone harks back to Italia 90, etc. This is different. It's going to be on our home soil. I referenced the numbers earlier about the appetite for international football. But when we were playing 3 games at home in the Aviva and the group games with home advantage, the increased, potential of going deeper into the tournament that brings, the country is going to be a wash of green, and it's going to be a real celebration for football.
And I presume that's not something as an association you do overnight. You have to presume there's 3-4 years worth of preparation going in towards a kind of a move like that.
Absolutely. Like, I suppose uniquely for me, it's nearly going full circle. So I used to work for the English FA, and back in 2018, getting off the plane from Russia, we conceived the idea of bidding for a World Cup in 2030. It then expanded to the UK nations, and then it expanded to the UK and Ireland. And I headed up that bid. So for me to be able to be the catalyst for what was a World Cup 2030 and then evolved into 2028, now to see us, a couple of years out from hosting it, I hope to be part of driving it home. But like it's a huge shift. Dublin City Council, the government, Transport for Ireland, everyone needs to come together. But we've got a really strong track record of delivering now for major events in this country, and I think I'm very confident it will be expertly delivered.
And was it ever viable that you might have used a second ground in Ireland? Was there ever even a possibility that another ground was on?
Absolutely. No, we had been collaborating with the GEA on the use of Croke Park, which, as we know, is a fantastic facility and huge capacity. But when you look across the breadth of Euro 2028 across what at that point in time was 5 countries, it's now down to 4 with Northern Ireland no longer featuring. UEFA wanted the right mix of stadia across the different countries, and having 2 in Dublin was not preferential for them. So we fell back to the Aviva Stadium. But by virtue of that, we're delighted to be hosting 7 games in the Aviva.
On that conversation, was there any talk of using Croke Park only, or was it only ever going to be the Aviva Stadium?
No. I think you need to recognise, the Aviva Stadium is designed for football. And this is a football tournament, and it is the home of football in this country. So there was never a question mark around the Aviva Stadium's presence in the bid. But also it's a good, it's a good capacity stadium. Not every stadium needs to be 70, 80,000. And you need a mix when you're delivering tournaments like this. So no, UEFA are quite comfortable. And as said, I think their experiences in both preparing for Euro 2020, which sadly Ireland didn't host, but also the execution of Euro 2020, Europa League 2024. And we're actually currently in a bidding process to host the Women's Champions League final 2029.
Brilliant.
So UEFA have a lot of experience with the stadium and have huge confidence.
Is there any concern about, say, the capacity of the transport, the congestion in Dublin?
No, none whatsoever. I think one of the unique selling points of Dublin is that the stadium's within walking distance. So on average for a match day, we might see 70% of fans coming via public transport. But for major finals, you would see that up on 85, 90%. So that's something that, UEFA really embrace with the social, economic, societal aspects of it as well.
Brilliant. Can you say now with confidence that the dark days of Irish football are behind us?
Yes, without doubt. I think when I look to the future, I can only see a bright future ahead of us. I think the reality is we're not out of the woods in the sense of, yes, we still have a huge volume of debt at 36.5 million. It still represents the second highest debt level of any federation in Europe. But I believe we carry ourselves in a very professional manner. I believe that we're quite quite committed to making sure that we honour those commitments, while also still having ambition for growth and development of the game. And I think that's the balance that we have managed to strike over the last couple of years. And as I look forward, I think, genuinely, it's a very, very exciting time for Irish football.
David Courell, thank you very much for joining us on the Business Post podcast.
Absolute pleasure.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Okay, welcome back, Peter. As I said, you were the one listening. What was your first and overall assessment of David Courell as an interviewee?
Well, I'll start with some numbers that jumped out at me. 30,000 season ticket holders.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And I mean, the growth, I think he said, was up from 23, which
stadium,
is Aviva for the men's senior team. That's an extraordinary number. I thought that was quite incredible. And then on the other side of it, only 11 full-time staff working in the academies, when we should have, I think, 200 odd, he said.
That struck out to me, yeah.
I mean, there's two showing difference. There's the potential of the interest, and as he says, nothing moves the country like football. And we saw that in recent months with, Troy Barrett's hat-trick and all that kind of great stuff that we saw in the last couple of months. But then you see the other side of it, the years of chronic underinvestment. So, to take both of those as kind of pillars, he seems to be accepting the dire state of where the FAI in football is or has been, but he also sees growth and opportunity and potential. And I suppose his job is trying to marry improving this and keeping that.
I asked questions in a particular way to see would he take the bait in terms of giving Delaney and those others who were there a kicking, and he didn't. And I thought I was quite revealing in its own right that this is a good guy. He probably says, I probably don't have time or the inclination to go kicking people who were gone. But what he did say, hang on, but this is the deck of cards I've been dealt with. I'll do the best I can with it. I think he's got willing stakeholders in the FAI, UEFA, in the government, UEFA and FIFA and the bank to give them that bit of leeway, because they probably all see the social benefit out of letting the game grow. There's no point having an FAI if it's Moriband who can't do anything. But I found it fascinating also as well that he's setting out his ambition for Euro 2028. I mean, that to me sounds like a real opportunity. Even if we don't qualify through the front door, he seems to think there's a back door. And for us to have 3 games at home with home advantage, I mean, the country will be on fire for that stuff.
Well, I think we're almost guaranteed qualification through that back door should we not get in kind of by right or by merit. And he's right. He said, there was a discussion in media at the time and elsewhere as, why are we looking at this, like this big shiny thing over here? Can we not focus on the 11 people in the academies?
Yeah.
I suppose his view was you can walk and chew gum, you can do both. And there's probably a certain logic in it. I mean, clearly from a financial point of view, it makes a lot of sense. But we saw what, beating Portugal and then the incredible hat-trick over in Hungary.
Budapest,
we saw what that did to give football in Ireland a shot in the arm.
Yeah.
And that was just like, that's
Qualifying
tiny,
game.
2 small, good games. So he's probably right, like getting the Euros here, what a shot in the arm that is for football.
Yeah.
But I think what people want to see is they want to see, okay, can you build upon that though? Here's something good, but can we actually use that, take the revenue, reinvest it in grassroots football and actually build something substantial? And that's what he's going to have to prove that the FAI is able to do.
And I think I alluded to at the start of the interview, look, I mean, again, having been in that room that day, I mean, the hurt around the chaos that went on was palpable, not only in the like from the politicians, but from across the media and then obviously the public at large. I mean, there was a genuine sense that we've had the wool pulled over our eyes, or that, that things were going on that they shouldn't have been going on. And we read, and again, give credit to Mark Tighe and Paul Rowan, who did brilliant work on this. They'd like to bring all of this to light was fantastic. And you just want to say, can you not put professionals in there? But I have ringing in my head, and I didn't say it to him, but like back to Saipan, like those après-match sketches, where they were like disheveled kind of lads joking that we're the most organised football association in the entirety of Merrion Square. And it was at the time, it just goes that there's a long road for the FAI to go on.
Absolutely.
But I there's something quite compelling I thought about him. Like, I mean, I'm not to give a guy a free pass, but I just genuinely thought there's a guy who seems to have a clear air of professionalism around him. He knows what he wants to do. It's a decent strategy document in front of him. They have, I think, a fair win now behind them both between the women's team and the men's team are doing reasonably well at an international. Huge amount of work at grassroots level. And again, you see it, there's a body of work there to be done to tap into that volunteerism or the voluntary kind of nature. There's a huge groundswell of people who are willing to give up their weekends to kind of stand.
I think so. Like my view is that like the whole country is dying to give these guys a break. They just need to show it on a consistent basis for a couple of years. And as we alluded to in the preamble, it hasn't really, as an organisation, even since Delaney, it really hasn't. It has been pockmarked by mini controversies or poorly handled, badly communicated, all sorts of different things, right? What I think about Courell and the new strategy is that he seems to see that you can't cut your way just out of a problem, and they have had redundancies, and that's painful. You have to also be able to grow your way out of it. And if you do the hard bit of cutting jobs, you have to show what the benefit is going to be. And he does seem to have that rounded vision of how to do it. And I think he deserves a fair hearing to do it now.
He spoke of that growth in commercial revenues. He spoke of, I suppose that there is potential there, both in the sort of premium market, in the kind of premium sales, because again, that was another travesty of the bygone, of the Delaney era, the whole premium level.
The tickets. Launch on the rooftop of the Watermark building and all that crazy stuff.
Like, we asked him what success was looked like, and he kind of gave his answer. But I think a true measure of the success of his era was that if we can get through another podcast with him and we don't mention John Delaney once, I mean, that would be success. If after 3 or 4 years you're talking about Euro 2028, you're talking about the growth of numbers, you're talking about the refurbishment of grounds at League of Ireland level, you're talking about, as he said, new playing procedures for kids at grassroots. I do hope they deliver on that Alliance season in terms of that kids.
But I agree on that. But even that, Mark Canham was the guy driving that made it his MO for 2 or 3 years. And then he up and left, and it seems to be shelved now. Like, that's the sort of stuff I think that destroys confidence in a new FAI. Now, there was opposition to it at kind of grassroots level, and it's not easy to implement. But I think that'll be this leadership's challenge to, if you say you're going to do something, make sure you deliver it and do it bit by bit and build confidence as you go.
But his answer was almost in what he said. Like, the answer to the problem was, we're an outlier. We're the only one of 55 organisations do not have an aligned season like that.
Yeah.
But I see it. You probably see it. You know, like kids playing in the depths of winter makes no sense when they're not playing in the best weather months of the year. I think, while he gave voice to some of the challenges, I think the most compelling aspect, and I was probably quipping a little bit with him, was around, does he have $100,000 check to cut, or is he in a position to cut $100,000 check?
Yeah.
I think, he kind of alluded to the fact that they've had to budget very carefully to make sure that they don't get themselves into that where they're burning up an overdraft and they're kind of in difficulty in terms of meeting their day-to-day payments. But you would have to take some solace in the fact that, they're actually budgeting on the basis of not qualifying, and if they do qualify, it's a bonus rather than kind of trying to kind of go the other way around, or hoping on a wing and a prayer that you manage to qualify.
Yeah. And he's tapping into a few different revenue streams. Like, he's getting more out of the government.
Yeah.
He's obviously gotten a break from his lenders. They're getting more out of ticket revenue now. They're getting more out of commercial partnerships,
sponsorships, and all the rest of it.
Now, a lot of that is coming from a low base, but you can only start where you're starting from. Yeah. So all of that bodes well. As I keep saying, I suppose it's about making sure you can show the use of that. But I think you have to give him credit for what he has done so far.
What was your sense of him as a leader? Because we kind of delve into that towards the end of the interview about his own leadership style. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was interesting. He said, I was COO and now went to CEO, and that's a bit of a transition. He's still learning it. I suppose that was kind of, it's not that huge a revelation, but it's a frank thing for a leader of an organisation to say. He's still working it out as he goes. He seems super calm and steady-handed, which maybe people are different in different circumstances, but that was the overriding sense of him that I got.
And someone who's he tries to be an enabler of the people around him. He's not trying to micromanage or sit on top of, and I always question this myself, when you're running an organisation, do you have to be in the weeds on everything, or do you let your team do their job and kind of raise a certain level of problem up to you if and when it comes? So that's always, for me, was always a kind of an interesting question. Okay, I think we'll leave it there. I think that was a very good. I think we've done a decent.
I think so. If you can keep me paying for my season ticket now without having to think about it for the coming years, we'll be doing a good job.
Well,
so
we can judge it that success.
Yeah, that's it.
Very good. Well, listen, thank you very much for joining us here on the Business Post podcast with me, Daniel McConnell,
and me, Peter O'Dwyer.
Until next week, we'll see you then. Bye bye for now.